Hello there, you're watching Sky News and the press preview. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines this evening with The Sun's political editor, Tom Newton-Dunn, and the Evening Standard columnist, Ayesha Hazarika. Great to see you both. Hello to you.
Hello.
Good evening again.
So let's take a look at the front pages and The Sun's front and their headline, White Widow Wiped Out. That is the lead story, our top story too this hour, with reports that Britain's most wanted woman, Sally Jones, has been killed by a US drone strike. The Eye leading with the Hollywood film producer Harvey Weinstein, with calls from MPs that he should be stripped of his CBE after being suspended from BAFTA. The Daily Mirror features the same story with allegations of sexual harassment from the model Cara Delevingne. Meanwhile, daggers drawn is the headline for the Daily Mail, with the Prime Minister and Chancellor at odds over the government's plans for a no-Brexit deal. A Brexit warning from the Chancellor on the front page of the Metro that a bad-tempered deal could ground flights between Britain and Europe. The Express leads with an announcement from Buckingham Palace that the Queen won't be laying a wreath at the Cenotaph at this year's Remembrance Sunday service. And the Queen is set to meet US President Donald Trump next year, the Times reports, in a stripped-down working visit to the UK. Higher income tax rates for the rich would help reduce inequality without affecting growth, according to a report from the IMF, quoted by The Guardian. Pensioners should not regard homes as an asset to pass on to their children, according to the Social Care Minister, when it could be sold to pay for care costs. That's in The Telegraph. Netflix and eBay facing scrutiny after paying a combined total of only £1.9 million in UK tax last year. That's in the FT. While The Star reports that a volcano in the Canary Islands could trigger a tsunami if it erupts. Ayesha Hazarika and Tom Newton-Dunn are here. Sun, obviously, White Widow wiped out, the story in your paper. What's the background to this then, Tom?
So this is something that actually happened in June. The US Air Force drone strike, a Predator drone carried out by the US Air Force, but tasked by the CIA, when they found Sally Jones, the #1 most wanted woman in Britain, and also a major epicenter of terror, perhaps, worldwide. This was one of the kingpin players now. She worked her way up ISIS's ranks to be hugely important recruiter for them. The public face, the almost a glamorous face of ISIS, who was an attractive figure to impressionable teenage girls. She persuaded quite a few of them to go over to Syria and join her twisted cause. But also she ran the female wing of ISIS's terror exports network. This is the foreign fighters who they would then dispatch to create mayhem on the streets of Europe or America. So it's a big coup for the Americans. She was taken out on the way to the Iraqi border, fleeing Raqqa, which was the ISIS capital, coming under siege and a lot of pressure from American and Kurdish fighters at the time, and is considered by the Americans a tremendous success. There is, of course, a fly in the ointment in all this, and that's the suggestion also now that we report that her son was killed at the same time, a 12-year-old called Jojo, who was 7 when she took him away from Kent, from their home, and took him out to Syria too. Not intended at all, we understand, to have been targeted. Wasn't believed to have been targeted at the time, wasn't believed to have been near the explosion, but is now subsequently thought that it's possible, though again not confirmed, but possible he was also killed.
Yes, and the difficulty, of course, is that under UN charters he would be too young to be deemed to be a soldier, and well, would that make it illegal to kill him? Who knows? Or is that just collateral damage? But there will be questions, I suppose, about that.
He was not a combatant.
Right.
People speaking to today on the American side quite adamant that he was not designated either a high-value target, which is what Sally Jones was, or a combatant. So there was no intention to go after and kill him. Look at this pragmatically, though. If he did die, quite frankly, it is his mother who put him in harm's way by taking him out to a war zone and potentially making him do unspeakable things. So that the family, his own family back in the UK, thought early in the summer they recognised him in one of ISIS's horror videos, potentially carrying out executions himself.
I mean, there will have to be questions asked about, well, first of all, you know, I think the British government will want to press to see and get a confirmation of this, because this woman's clearly terrible, evil person, but is a British citizen, and her son is a British citizen as well. So we need to find out actually what happened. And there will be questions that I'm sure that there will be a UQ by Labour Party people tomorrow. I think the government will have to come forward and make a statement about this, because there are rules. I mean, drones are a new form of military action, but they are still subject to sort of regulation, and there's kind of international laws and ethics that need to be adhered to. But there is a bigger question, which is what drove this woman to go out to the unspeakable horror that is in the caliphate? Like, what made her think that that was a better option for her and her son? And, you know, the sort of radicalisation of women as well is incredibly disturbing. And, you know, I think you have to ask big questions about the psychology that drives this. I mean, there's a bit, I think your reporter was alluding to it. Apparently friends of hers said that she had wanted to leave and she had wanted to come back, but she was trapped there with her husband or her fiancé. I mean, we'll never know the truth. But, you know, we've got to do more to try and stop vulnerable. I don't know what was wrong with this woman in terms of what attracted her to go out there, but try and stop these women going out there.
I think in previous articles carried by The Sun, Jojo's grandfather, Terry Lynch, has spoken of the fact that drugs turned his stepdaughter, Sally Jones, into this IS nut, as he said. And he at the time said he didn't care if she died, such is the shame on the family. So whatever it is, whether it's drugs or meeting the wrong person, there might be many reasons why people do it.
I never subscribed to the theory that drugs did turn anyone wrong. I think drugs was a symptom of the original problems there. But the bottom line on this is this was a seriously unpleasant person who was doing everything in her powers to create terrible slaughter and mayhem on our streets. It can only be a good thing that she's no longer with us, and, you know, it has to be marked as a success against the fight against ISIS. And with this, you know, they've lost a major pin-up. It's not just the fact you've got a major player taken out of the game here. It's also the fact that she was this great recruiting icon. And when people like this are taken out, exactly the same with Jihadi John when drone strike, you know, got him a few years ago. These are people who, you know, look 9 feet high and impregnable. When the Americans track them down and kill them, suddenly they're not 9 feet high anymore. They're losers. They've lost the game, and that is a severe PR blow to ISIS. Why would anyone want to sign up to their cause?
But there's also the counter view that she's a martyr now as well, and I mean, that is such an arresting image. You know, there is also the idea that this is already, people will probably be scrambling for the film rights for this as we speak, because this is an incredibly unusual story. You have a white, blonde, attractive woman that has been sort of seduced by this horrific, evil cult. I mean, there is a lot of sensationalising of this story as well. So I hope that the magic has gone from her. But my worry is that there will be people who will see her as a martyr as well.
And I'm sure you're not saying that's a reason not to kill her, though.
No, I'm not. That's what I'm saying. But I'm saying I don't think that this just, you know, is going to sort of say, right, it's going to deter people. It may also sort of make her an even more romantic figure as well.
But there were questions after the death of Mohammed Emwazi, and in fact even Jeremy Corbyn has said that, you know, specified that he would prefer people to be brought before a court of law, which some people ridicule, saying, how do you bring an IS supporter before a court of law? But that sentiment that drone strikes take people out, summary justice, you know, there will be questions about this.
Sure, I think in a way the preferred option always would be to bring somebody, if possible, to a court of justice, because they're a diminished figure away from all the sort of,
and you can ask them those questions that we're
exactly, and and a lot of the mystique has gone from them. You know, they're just a person, they're answering the questions, but as you say, it's often not possible to capture them and bring them in.
Completely, and you know, the laws of warfare have changed, quite frankly. You don't have armies facing each other wearing uniforms any longer. No. It's asymmetrical. They're playing by completely different rules that we're playing by, so we have to change our rules, and the legality of all this is very, very clear. People like Sally Jones, as was Emwazi Jihadi John, as was Sally Jones's husband, Junaid Hussain, was also killed in a drone strike 2 years ago. They posed a direct threat to UK interests and to UK lives. Without any doubt whatsoever, the RAF, the CIA, the US Air Force are well within the laws of combat to take them out.
Sure, but there's a bigger question. There's also a much bigger hearts and minds issue to stop young people being lured to this like horrific death cult as well.
We may disagree on this. I think things like this help.
I'm not sure.
Major Adrian Rankine Galloway, Pentagon spokesperson. We have no information at this time to substantiate the report. We are looking into the report and will provide information as soon as possible.
It's called holding
I'll leave
statement.
it there, shall I? That's a good holding
We'll get
statement.
back to you, says the Pentagon.
Okay, now this is fascinating. Inside Pages, the latest on Harvey Weinstein. The question is, did his brother reveal all? Tell us more.
It's a fascinating story. And so many, many more women have come out today, Cara Delevingne being one of them. It would appear there aren't many women who've ever walked or crossed the boards in Hollywood who haven't been approached and mistreated by Harvey Weinstein. But what caught our eye was this piece in the Daily Mail about this extraordinary Cain and Abel type sort of biblical plot that it would appear that at the root of all, where those Harvey Weinstein allegations originally come from, his brother, Bob Weinstein, who he's run this incredibly successful company with for 30 years. And according to Harvey Weinstein, it was his brother who took the personnel file for Harvey from their company, which detailed a fair bit of these problems he's been having with sexually assaulting women because there may have been payouts in the past, etc., and sent it to the New York Times to substantiate the original story about Harvey in a bid to wipe him off the face of the company. Of course, Bob denies this and says has got some particularly choice quotes reported in the Daily Mail, all on lines of, "My brother is deeply sick and a proven liar and needs to get lost rather than blaming others." So the family blood is not good. That much has to be said in the Weinstein family. But if that is what's happened, it's another incredible twist.
Yeah, I mean, quite frankly, I don't really care about two very wealthy, powerful men rowing about who has primacy over their film empire. What is horrific.
Well, or it might be a brother disgusted at the brother's behaviour.
Well, I'm sure it's probably more to do with the power games and ownership of the company. I don't think he was doing it on moral grounds. If he'd done it on moral grounds, I'm sure he would have confronted his brother like a long time ago. It's the story of all the women coming out. It is the story of literally hundreds of women coming out now, from waitresses right through to, you know, Gwyneth Paltrow. You have the full spectrum. And it is extraordinary about what an abuse of power that went on. But one of the things that I have been quite annoyed about is how some newspapers have almost set a test for female actresses. Like, how long did it take you to come out and condemn him? And the key issue is, right, it's not the fault of women in Hollywood. It's the fault of that disgusting sexual menace who went around sort of creeping out women. And I hate this idea that somehow, oh, let's try and get a stick to beat more women up about. I mean, I saw some ridiculous thing about trying to almost blame Hillary Clinton for, you know, you can blame Hillary Clinton for a lot of things, but blaming her for Harvey Weinstein is quite a stretch.
She's on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. She's obviously come out as well and condemned him. Yeah. Weinstein links to Democrats in the spotlight. This was Steve Bannon, wasn't it, who I think some agency copies saying that Steve Bannon had connections to him as well. I mean, it's getting kind of murky, but as you say, more women coming through. It's making all of the front pages. There's the Daily Mirror. Hollywood's sex beast lured me to hotel for a threesome. Was it normalised behaviour?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, it clearly was. But I mean, Ayesha's right. The real scandal here is how on earth this could have been allowed to happen for so long when everyone appeared to have known about it. And you know, I think it's tough, quite frankly, to blame young female actresses for not, you know, singing like canaries when it would have, without a doubt, meant the end of their careers. Yeah. But the people around Weinstein, you know, his assistants, his fellow producers, his minions of staff, you know, what were they doing? Why were they not blowing the whistle? Why were they trying somehow to stop all this?
Again, it's that power. Like, I used to work in the music industry, and you saw things like this going on as well. But basically, as a young junior person, what are you going to do? You're like nothing, and you've probably had it done to you as well. And who's going to believe you? A lot of this is about victims never being believed.
Yeah, we must move on, but just pointing out the Prime Minister joining the attack, question about his CBE, about his BAFTA, and the Oscars committee meeting on Saturday to discuss it as well. So we will continue to follow that story. Plenty more still to come. Will or won't Donald Trump meet the Queen? Back in a moment. Welcome back to the press preview. We are taking a look through the newspapers. I'm joined by Ayesha Hazarika and Tom Newton-Dunn. Let's go to the Daily Mail. Their headline, daggers drawn. I'm confused. Why does a Tory-supporting newspaper drag out every last vestige of disharmony between anybody to do with Brexit?
What a terrible thing to do to a newspaper, to cause trouble like that.
But I think
But
it just...
when you're supposed to be supporting the Conservative Party, or are they not trying to?
Well, I think it just shows you that the Conservative Party is incredibly divided. I mean, Tom and I were both at Tory party conference last week, not together, but like there's so much division around, and the problem is...
But there is in the country, so what's the big deal?
No, but they are meant to be the government. They're meant to be being united on Brexit. They clearly aren't. Philip Hammond is saying one thing on Brexit and saying that he's not going to spend any money in preparing for a no-deal scenario. Theresa May stands up at PMQs and goes, no, that's not the case. They are all over the place. I mean, the other part of PMQs, which hasn't really been reported, is Corbyn quite rightly attacked the Prime Minister for this universal credit rollout. The helpline is 50p a minute, which is unbelievable. Look,
well, we had a minister on earlier who said that's only if you call from a mobile, and if you call from a landline,
of people don't
12p or whatever it was.
Lots of people are going to be on their mobiles. I mean, the government is all over the place at the moment.
I've got a slightly different take on that. There is definitely disharmony in the Cabinet on Brexit. That's not new news. Theresa May and Philip Hammond had a little bit of a dust-up today over whether they were going to spend money on no deal or not. Quite frankly, the Daily Mail, although I have huge respect for my colleagues who work on it, have completely overdone this one. Today was a row about presentation. The government is spending £250 million on preparations for any type of Brexit, and only a bit of that is going to go on no deal. Quite frankly, if they really wanted to take this seriously, and she really wanted to slap down the Chancellor,
no, but this is
she'd
about
be spending billions.
This is about getting rid of Philip Hammond, isn't it? This is the Chancellor's charge sheet
point.
going
So
back to
Mail,
July the 12th, 2016.
To answer your question originally, the Daily Mail have seen a very good way to try and absolutely whack Philip Hammond round the head with a cricket bat. Probably a tad unfairly, in my view, because, quite frankly, it's a presentational thing. The PM desperately wants to show her Brexiteer backbenchers she's doing an awful lot to prepare for no deal. The sort of money they're talking about today is an absolute drop in the ocean, and quite frankly, I don't think we should be hugely calmed by it.
It does show how completely disunited and disorganised and what such disarray that they're in over Brexit.
Queen.
The Queen.
The Queen, yes. I'm going to very quickly show the Express on the way to the other story, which is the Queen will not actually lay the wreath at the cenotaph. That will be Prince Charles this year. She will be on a balcony overlooking the cenotaph with her husband, who's retired from royal duties.
Very sad.
And meanwhile, picture of her there with the same story, but Trump is set to meet the Queen in this downgraded UK visit.
Do you think she could maybe she could outsource her meeting duties to someone else so she doesn't have to meet Trump? Maybe that's why the two announcements have coincided.
Right, because everybody else seems to be reporting that she won't meet him anyway. So...
Right. So, guess what? We woke up this morning that Trump was going to meet the Queen, invited on a state visit, no date set. Then the Evening Standard dropped. It was downgraded to a working visit. He wasn't going to meet the Queen. Then the US Embassy popped up to say, actually, we're not planning for a working visit. We're planning for a state visit. So somehow it's news tomorrow morning that Trump meets the Queen. This is how the lobby works. On a day we have something to work with, we can
in terms
turn
of
it around, recreate
okay, that's your view of the lobby.
That's
your view of the lobby, but a lot of the public are going to be horrified that Trump is coming because a lot of the British public don't want him to come.
That's true.
Okay.
Do we need to fill 5 more seconds of rowing? Or
I think I might be all right. Thank you both very much indeed for coming.
Thanks for having us. Thanks.
Ayesha Hazarika, Tom and Dunn, thank you. Top stories, of course, are coming up next, including that report from The Sun that the jihadi known as the White Widow has been killed.